Someone was living in the attic. The thing about living in a big city is that it's impossible to know your neighbors. I knew this before moving to New York, but I didn't realize how true it was until I actually experienced it myself. I'd been living in my apartment for about 6 months when I realized that someone had been living in my attic the whole time. My apartment was part of a duplex. That means there is one apartment on the first floor and then another apartment directly above me on the second floor. The first floor has a backyard and a full basement, while the second floor has a small balcony with a door that leads to the attic. It's basically just a giant storage space. I'd always wondered what was up there because when I signed my lease, I did the walkthrough and my landlord pointed out that the door was locked and off limits. I asked him if he could open it so I could take a look, but he said he didn't have a key. Apparently, no one had been up there in years. But I never thought anything of it until one day when I was in my kitchen and I heard footsteps above me. I assumed it was my upstairs neighbor, nothing out of the ordinary. And I didn't think about it again until one night when I was home alone and I heard footsteps again. It was the same sound as before, but this time it definitely wasn't my upstairs neighbor. You see, he works from home, so I would have been able to tell if he was there. This time, though, he wasn't, plus I'm pretty sure he doesn't make that exact sound. It was the sound of someone walking on bare feet, and since he wears slippers, I'm pretty sure it wasn't him. So I went to investigate. I went into my backyard and stood by the back door. Then I listened intently. When I heard the footsteps again, I followed the sound. It was definitely coming from above me. So I went to the door at the top of the stairs leading to the second floor. I knocked on it, but obviously no one answered. Of course it was locked and I didn't have a key. So I tried to look through the window. I couldn't see inside because it was pitch black. And even if I could, there was no way I was going to be able to see anything through a window that small. So I left and went back to my backyard. I told myself there was a perfectly logical explanation for this, but deep down I knew there wasn't. I mean, why would my landlord keep the door locked if there was nothing up there? And why hadn't I heard these footsteps before? Either way, it was too creepy for me to deal with on my own. So I called my friend Chris over to help me. He's a bit of an adrenaline junkie, so he was excited to hear there might be an intruder. We went to the door and he tried to open it, but like me, he couldn't. We looked through the window and saw the same things I'd seen before. Chris suggested we try to look through the window from the outside, so I got some planks of wood and set them up against the house. When I climbed on them, I was just high enough to look through the window. I couldn't see anything, but I could tell that the door to the attic was definitely open. That meant whatever was up there was safe inside. Chris and I were both getting freaked out, so we decided to leave and come back with more people. We invited our friends Emily and Danny over and they brought their flashlights. Before we knew it, we had a whole group of 5 people staring at the attic door. None of us were willing to go in. So Chris handed his flashlight to Emily and asked her to shine it through the window, while he climbed onto the planks of wood. She aimed the flashlight at the crack between the window and the doorframe. And when she did, we all gasped. There was a pair of yellow eyes glaring back at us. We all screamed and then ran away. I don't remember who dropped it, but one of the flashlights fell and shattered on the ground. A few of us stood there frozen while the rest of us stared at the attic door, unsure of what to do next. After a few seconds, Danny, being the brave one that he is, stepped forward. He reached out and knocked on the door. He called out, "Is anyone there?" There was no answer. So he tried again. "Hello, if you're in there, please come out." Still, nothing. Danny was about to try again when suddenly the door creaked open. We all screamed again and backed away. When the door opened a little wider, we could see a pair of legs. Then a man emerged. He was tall and skinny and he had long, greasy hair and a scraggly beard. We could tell he was homeless by the way he was dressed, or rather the way he was undressed. He was wearing dirty clothes that were clearly several sizes too small for him. His shoes were scuffed and torn and he had a backpack slung over his shoulder. He looked at us cautiously. Can I help you?" he asked. "Are you living in the attic?" Emily finally managed to say. He nodded slowly. "Yeah, I need to get out of here," he mumbled, looking down at his feet. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to intrude." It was clear that he'd been living there for a while, because there was stuff piled up behind him. There were boxes and bags and other things that looked like they'd been used as makeshift furniture. He shuffled past us and headed down the stairs. We all stared at him until he was out of sight. Then we started talking a mile a minute. We were a mixture of confused, scared, and angry. Confused because he'd been living in the attic the whole time and we hadn't noticed. Scared because we almost attacked him, and angry because he'd been living there without our knowledge. Eventually, though, we calmed down and decided that we should probably talk to him. We walked over to where he'd gone and found him sitting on the steps leading to the basement. He was hugging his knees and staring at the ground. "Hey," I said softly. He looked up at me with wide, frightened eyes. Can I ask you something?" He nodded slowly. "How long have you been up there?" He looked down again. "A couple of months, I guess." I sat down next to him. "Well, why didn't you tell us you were there?" He shrugged. I don't know. I was scared. I could see that he was still nervous, so I tried to put him at ease. "Hey, we're not going to hurt you. We just want to help." He looked at me for a moment. Then he nodded slowly. Okay, it turned out his name was Ben, and he'd been staying in the attic because he was homeless. He'd been living on the streets for a few months after he got kicked out of his parents' house. He said he appreciated us letting him stay in the attic, but he also admitted that it was getting a bit cramped. He only had a thin blanket to sleep on and most of his stuff was in storage. We told him we were going to help him find somewhere else to live and he agreed. We called a local charity that helps the homeless and explained the situation. They said they'd come pick him up and take him to a shelter. We helped him pack up his stuff and get ready to leave. As we were walking down the stairs, I felt bad for yelling at him. He was in a bad situation, but it wasn't his fault. No one had offered him any help or guidance, and instead we've gotten scared and angry at him. I apologized for yelling at him and thanked him for being honest with us. He smiled weakly. No, it's okay, I understand. I would have done the same thing. When the nice people from the charity arrived, we all said our goodbyes. I gave him some money and told him to buy himself something nice. He thanked us profusely and promised he would. Then he got in the car and they drove away. You're probably wondering why my landlord didn't tell us he was up there. Well, he actually had no idea we'd found him. See, the door had been locked when he bought the building, and he just assumed the lock had been broken for a while. He'd figured it was just kids playing up there. Whoops, anyway. He was super grateful that we'd taken care of the situation. He said he would have evicted him immediately if he'd known. As for us, we never found out how he'd managed to get up there in the first place. There's a door from the second floor that leads to the attic, but it's locked, and none of us ever heard him coming or going. Still, we all agreed that it was for the best. He was in a bad situation and we'd helped him get back on his feet.